The Weight of a Name. Good evening, welcome back. Tonight we are in Stillwater Cove, Maine, where the tide comes in, and so do the secrets. Before we begin, if you enjoy what we do here, please like the video and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you are and what time it is. Now get comfortable, turn off the lights, and let us find out what happened. Chapter 1. The Callaway Boy. Nora Alcott woke at 5:45 to the sound of Beckett landing on the hardwood floor. The cat was large and gray and utterly unimpressed by the concept of morning. He sat in the middle of the bedroom rug and stared at her with the flat expression of a creature who had never once been grateful for food, shelter, or the fact that she had not yet stepped on his tail. She lay still for a moment, listening to the wind against the cottage windows. November had arrived with frost and the first real snow of the season. The old house groaned in ways it did not groan in summer. Her aunt had left her this place 12 years ago, and every winter Nora remembered why her aunt had spent every winter in Florida. The radiators clanked. The kitchen floor was always cold. Beckett had taken to sleeping on top of the refrigerator, which was the warmest spot in the house. She fed him at 6, then stood at the kitchen window with a mug of coffee, watching the harbor through the falling snow. The tide was out. The mudflats stretched gray and empty toward the channel markers. A single set of headlights moved along Shore Road, someone heading to work early. And then, nothing. The town was still sleeping. The coffee was good. The quiet was better. She had learned to take these moments when they came because they never lasted. Her phone buzzed at 6:32. The caller ID said Harold Vance. Nora knew the name. Vance was a contractor, 61 years old, a man who had built half the decks in Stillwater Cove and repaired the other half. He had been born here, left for a few years after high school, come back, married a woman from Rockland, buried her 5 years ago. He was the kind of person who showed up when you needed something fixed, and did not talk more than necessary. Nora answered. She did not have to say hello. Deputy Alcott, Vance said. His voice was strange, flat, the kind of flat that came from shock, not calm. Harold, what is it? It is James Callaway. I am at the mill, the old Harrington mill. I came early to beat the snow, and I found him. He is on the floor. He is not moving. Nora set down her coffee. She asked him to stay where he was and touch nothing. She asked him if he had called anyone else. No, Vance said. I called you first. Good. Stay outside if you can. Do not go back in the room. I will be there in 15 minutes. She pulled on her boots and her coat. Beckett watched her from the top of the refrigerator, his tail curling around his paws. She grabbed her keys and her phone and her service weapon, though she did not expect to need it. A contractor finding a body in a mill did not sound like an active scene, but in Stillwater Cove, you never assumed anything. The Harrington Mill had stood on the east bank of the cove since 1892. It had milled lumber for 2 generations of Stillwater boat builders before closing in the 70s. For the past 40 years, it had been a landmark, nothing more. A stone and timber skeleton that summer visitors photographed as a quaint ruin. Then James Callaway bought it. James had left Stillwater Cove at 22, a young man with a finance degree and no interest in his father's fishing business. He had done well in New York, very well. The kind of well that people in Stillwater Cove only heard about through third-hand gossip. His return 6 months ago had been a surprise. His purchase of the mill had been a bigger one. He said he wanted to restore the building, create a space for local artists and small businesses. Some people in town were pleased, some were wary. James was a Callaway, after all, and the Callaways had a complicated history with Stillwater Cove. Nora parked her cruiser at the bottom of the mill road and walked the last 100 yards. The snow was fresh, undisturbed except for Harold Vance's footprints leading to the main entrance. The mill loomed above her, 4 stories of dark stone and broken windows, the wind pulling at the loose boards on the upper floors. She pulled her collar up and went inside. The air was cold and still, and smelled of old wood and cold iron and something else, something faintly chemical that she could not place. The stairs to the second floor creaked under her weight. Harold Vance stood in the doorway of the office, his hands shoved into the pockets of his canvas jacket. His face the color of the snow outside. He did not say anything, he just stepped aside. The office was small, maybe 12 feet by 12, with a single window that looked out over the cove. A wooden desk sat against the far wall, covered in papers and empty coffee cups. A wooden chair lay on its side near the door, and in the center of the floor, on his back, one arm stretched out as if reaching for something he had not quite caught, lay James Calloway. Nora knelt beside him. She did not touch the body. She did not need to. She could see that his skin had the waxy pallor of someone who had been dead for hours, not minutes. His eyes were closed, his mouth slightly open. His clothes were neat, too neat. A white dress shirt, no tie, dark pants, leather shoes. No blood, no visible wounds. Nothing out of place except the chair and the fact that a man was dead on the floor of a mill that should have been empty. She looked at his hands. The nails were clean. No defensive marks, no dirt under the fingertips, no signs of a struggle. Then she looked at his left arm, where the sleeve of his shirt had been pushed up just above the elbow. A small puncture mark, no larger than a pinprick, sat in the crook of his arm. The skin around it was faintly discolored, a pale blue that did not look like bruising. She had seen marks like this before, in Boston, on bodies that had been found in apartments and alleyways and once in the back of a delivery truck. They came from needles. Sometimes they meant nothing. Sometimes they meant everything. Nora stood up. She asked Harold Vance when he had last seen James alive. "Yesterday afternoon," he said, "around 4. James was in the office, same as always, working on paperwork. He seemed fine, a little tired, maybe, but fine." "Did he say anything about meeting anyone?" "No, he just said he would see me in the morning." Nora looked at the chair on its side near the door. If James had fallen after being struck or pushed, the chair would have fallen in the same direction as his body. But the chair had fallen toward the door. The body lay perpendicular to it. Someone had moved the chair after James went down, or someone had placed it there deliberately. She asked Vance to wait downstairs. Then she took out her phone. She called the medical examiner first. Then she called the state forensic unit. Then she stood in the doorway of the office, looking at the body of a man she had barely known and the town he had come back to. And she thought about what Harold Vance had said. James Calloway had seemed fine yesterday afternoon, by midnight. According to the lividity and the body temperature she had estimated from experience, he was dead. She walked back through the mill, down the creaking stairs, out into the snow. The wind had picked up, and the harbor was invisible behind a curtain of white. She stood beside her cruiser for a long moment, letting the cold hit her face, and she thought about the puncture mark on James Calloway's arm. A man with no known medical problems. A needle mark that should not be there. A chair that had fallen in the wrong direction. And a town full of people who had known the Calloway name for longer than Nora had been alive. She got in the car and drove back toward the station. The snow falling harder now. The roads beginning to slick. Behind her, the Harrington mill disappeared into the storm. And somewhere inside it, James Calloway lay on the floor with his secrets still pressed against his skin. Nora turned on the heater and the wipers and tried not to think about Boston. She failed. But she had learned over the past 4 years to let the memories come and go without holding on to them. This one was a needle mark on the dead man's arm, and a case she had worked in Dorchester that had ended badly for everyone involved. She pushed it away. She had a different dead man now, and a different town, and a different set of secrets to uncover. She would not make the same mistakes twice. She could not afford to. Chapter 2. What Iris Overheard. The Stillwater Cove Sheriff's Office was a small, drafty building on Harbor Street, wedged between a vacant storefront and the town's only hardware store. It had 2 desks, one holding cell that had not been used in 6 months, and a coffee maker that had seen better decades. The smell of low tide drifted through the cracks in the walls, no matter how many times Nora asked maintenance to seal them. She arrived at 7:15, before the forensic team had even left the mill. The office was empty. Sheriff Roy Gannett would not be in until 9, if he came in at all. He had a doctor's appointment, or so he had said. Nora suspected he just did not like the cold. She sat at her desk and wrote down everything she had seen. The position of the body, the chair on its side, the puncture mark, the clean hands, the neat clothes, the chemical smell in the air that she still could not identify. She wrote in short declarative sentences, the way she had been trained in Boston, facts only, no interpretation, not yet. At 8 o'clock, her stomach growled. She had not eaten since yesterday. She locked her notes in the desk drawer and walked the 3 blocks to Harlow's Diner. Harlow's Diner sat on the corner of Main and Wharf Street, a white clapboard building with a red neon sign that had been flickering for 20 years. The parking lot was empty, except for a few pickup trucks and one sedan with Massachusetts plates. The windows were steamed over from the heat inside. Nora pushed through the door and felt the warmth hit her face like a welcome she had not known she needed. Iris Harlow was behind the counter, pouring coffee for a man in a plaid jacket. She was 50, give or take, with gray streaking through her dark hair and arms that had lifted more coffee pots than anyone in the county. She saw Nora walk in and had a cup poured before Nora reached the counter. "You look like you have not slept," Iris said. "I have not." "And you look like you have not eaten." "Also true." Iris set the coffee down and pointed to the corner booth. "Sit. I will bring you the special." Nora sat. The vinyl on the booth seat was cracked and patched with duct tape, but it was warm and it was familiar. She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug and let the heat seep into her fingers. The diner was quiet. 2 fishermen at the far end, talking low. A woman in a winter coat reading a paperback. The man in the plaid jacket paying his bill. This was the Stillwater Cove she knew, the one that moved slowly and spoke softly and did not ask too many questions. Iris came back with a plate of eggs and toast and home fries. She set it down and slid into the booth across from Nora, which meant she wanted to talk. Iris did not sit unless she had something to say. "I heard about James Calloway," Iris said. "Word travels fast. This town has 900 people in the winter, Nora. Word travels at the speed of a harbor rumor." Iris picked up a sugar dispenser and turned it in her hands. Harold Vance stopped by on his way home. Looked like he had seen a ghost. "He found the body, I know." Iris set the sugar down. "That is not what I want to tell you." Nora took a bite of eggs and waited. "James was in here 3 times last week," Iris said. "That is a lot for a man who does not live here yet." He sat at the counter, not a booth. "Strange for a man who wants privacy." She paused. He was asking questions. Not about real estate, about old things. "What kind of old things?" "A name. East Cove Holdings. He asked me if I remembered it. I told him no, because I did not. But I wrote it down because I write everything down." She tapped her temple. "In here. I have been thinking about it since last night, and I still do not know what it is, but I know who might." "Who?" He asked the same question to Magnus Torkel at the Seabird, and he asked Vera Stout at the Breakwater, and he asked Cal Finney down at the harbor. Iris leaned closer. "That was 3 days ago. Yesterday he stopped asking. He looked like he had found what he was looking for." Nora set down her fork. "Did he seem different?" "Yes, he seemed relieved." Iris poured more coffee into Nora's mug. "And then he came in one more time, last night, around 7. He was not relieved anymore. He looked scared." "Nora, I have seen scared people in this diner for 30 years. I know the difference between worried and scared. He was scared." "Did he say anything to you last night?" "He ordered coffee, drank half of it, left a $5 bill on the counter, and walked out. But before he left, he wrote something on a napkin. He folded it and put it in his pocket. I saw the writing when he folded it. 3 words. East Cove Holdings. And a name I did not recognize." "What name?" "Pike. Russell Pike." Nora did not recognize the name either. She filed it away and asked Iris if James had been with anyone last night. He was alone when he came in, but he was not alone when he left. Someone was waiting for him outside. A man. I did not see his face, just his coat. Dark wool, expensive. Iris stood up. Someone else needed coffee. She touched Nora's shoulder as she passed. A quick squeeze, and then she was gone, leaving Nora alone with the eggs and the toast and the name Russell Pike. Nora finished her breakfast and paid at the counter. Iris refused to take her money, as she always did when Nora was working a case. "Use it to buy something useful," Iris said, "like a warmer coat." Nora walked back to the station through the falling snow. The wind had picked up again, and the harbor was choppy, whitecaps forming in the channel. She thought about what Iris had told her. James Calloway had been asking about something called East Cove Holdings. He had been asking a lot of people. Then he had stopped asking. Then he had looked relieved. Then he had looked scared. Then he was dead. Her phone rang as she reached the station door. It was the medical examiner. "Deputy Alcott, I have your preliminary report." Nora stepped inside and closed the door against the wind. "Tell me." "No external trauma, no defensive wounds. The puncture mark on the arm is consistent with a hypodermic needle. But there is no track marking. This was not a habitual user. This was a single injection. Cause of death? Not yet. I'm waiting on toxicology. But I can tell you what it is not. It is not a heart attack. His heart was healthy, no blockages, no enlargement, no signs of chronic disease. Whatever killed him, it was not natural." Nora leaned against the filing cabinet. "Thank you. Call me the moment you have the talk screen. You will be the first." She hung up and stood in the empty office, listening to the radiators clank and the wind rattle the windows. A man with a healthy heart had died with a needle mark on his arm. A man who had been asking about something called East Cove Holdings. A man who had looked scared the night he died. She sat down at her desk and wrote the name in her notebook. Russell Pike. Then she wrote East Cove Holdings. Then she underlined both of them twice. At noon. Sheriff Gannett still had not come in. Nora left him a voicemail and drove back out to the mill. The forensic team was finishing up, bagging evidence and photographing the room. The lead tech, a woman named Delaney, who had transferred from Augusta last year, met her at the door. "We found something you should see," Delaney said. She led Nora to a corner of the office that had been hidden behind a stack of old lumber. The lumber had been moved. Behind it, in the wall, was a shallow recess. The recess was empty. "There was a box here," Delaney said. "You can see the outline in the dust. Something about 12 inches by 8 inches, metal, by the scrape marks. Someone took it out recently, within the last few days. I would say, the dust pattern is fresh." Nora looked at the empty recess in the wall. She thought about James Calloway looking relieved. Then she thought about him looking scared. Someone had taken something from that wall, and whoever took it might be the same person who put the needle in James Calloway's arm. She thanked Delaney and walked back to her cruiser. The snow was falling harder now, the kind of snow that meant the roads would be bad by nightfall. She sat in the driver's seat with the engine running and the heat on full, and she stared at the mill through the fogged-up windshield. James Calloway had found something in that wall, a box, a secret, something worth killing for. She needed to find out what it was, and she needed to find out who had taken it. Chapter 3. The Sisters' Key. The Calloway house sat on the north end of Stillwater Cove, a 3-story Victorian painted white with blue shutters, set back from the road by 100 yards of lawn that had gone brown with the cold. The house had been in the family since 1904, when the first Calloway made his money in shipping and built something grand enough to prove it. The current generation had let it fade. The shutters needed paint. The front steps sagged in the middle. The mailbox leaned at an angle that suggested it had been hit by a plow at least once. Nora parked on the street and walked up the gravel drive. The snow had been shoveled recently, the path to the front door clear, the steps salted. Someone was still taking care of the place, even if they were not taking care of the paint. She rang the bell at 1:15. The door opened after a long moment, and Carol Calloway stood in the doorway, blinking against the light reflecting off the snow. Carol was 44, 5 years younger than her brother, with the same dark hair and the same sharp cheekbones. But where James had been lean and composed, Carol looked worn. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. She wore an old sweater with a hole in the elbow and jeans that had faded to a soft gray. Her eyes were red. Her nose was red. She had been crying, and not just recently. "Deputy Alcott," Carol said. Her voice was flat. "I was wondering when you would come. May I come in?" Carol stepped aside. The hallway was dark and cold. The heat turned down too low for comfort. A grandfather clock ticked slowly against the far wall. The floorboards creaked under Nora's boots. Carol led her to a sitting room at the back of the house, a room that looked out over a frozen garden and the gray harbor beyond. They sat across from each other. Carol did not offer coffee or tea. She just sat with her hands in her lap, staring at the window. "I am sorry about your brother," Nora said. Carol nodded. She did not say thank you. She did not say anything. "When was the last time you saw James?" "Tuesday afternoon. He came by to pick up some papers, old family things. He was looking for something." "What was he looking for?" Carol turned from the window and looked at Nora for the first time. Her eyes were tired, the kind of tired that sleep could not fix. "He did not tell me. James never told me anything. He came back to Stillwater Cove after 27 years, and he acted like he owned the place. Because he did, eventually. He owned most of it." "What do you mean?" "Our father left everything to James. The house, the remaining money, the trust, everything." Carol's voice cracked on the last word. "I got to manage the property, a salary, a small one, and the understanding that I would keep the Calloway name respectable while James played finance in New York. That must have been difficult." Carol laughed. It was a short sound, bitter and quick. "You have no idea. I have been here for 20 years, Deputy. 20 years of town meetings and church suppers and pretending that the Calloways still mattered. James was in New York buying and selling companies. I was here making sure the roof did not collapse." Nora let the silence stretch. She had learned years ago that people filled silences if you waited long enough. Some people filled them with truth. Some people filled them with lies. Either way, they filled them. Carol looked down at her hands. "James was going to cut me out of the will, completely. He told me 3 weeks ago. He said I had mismanaged the estate. That was not true. I kept every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement. He just did not want me to have anything." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because everyone in town will tell you anyway." Carol looked up. "I had a motive. Deputy, I know how this works. The sister who gets cut out of the will. The sister who has been cleaning up her brother's messes for 2 decades. The sister who finally snaps." "Did you?" "No." Carol's voice was steady. "I did not kill my brother. I hated him, sometimes, but I did not kill him." Nora studied her face. The red eyes could be grief. The flat voice could be shock. The bitterness could be real. But none of that meant anything. People lied about murder every day. Sometimes they lied without even knowing they were lying. "Do you have a key to the Harrington Mill?" "Yes. James gave me one when he bought the building, in case of emergencies." "When was the last time you used it?" Carol hesitated. The hesitation was short, less than a second, but Nora caught it. "I have not been to the mill in months. James did not want me there. He said I would just get in the way." Nora looked down at Carol's feet. She was wearing slippers now, soft woolen things with rubber soles, but by the door, near the coat rack, there was a pair of boots. The boots were wet. The laces were dark with moisture. Someone had been outside recently, walking through snow. Carol followed her gaze. Her jaw tightened. "I went for a walk this morning," Carol said, "before you came. I could not sit in the house anymore." "Where did you walk?" "To the harbor. I needed air." Nora nodded. She did not push. Not yet. She asked Carol if she knew a man named Russell Pike. The name meant nothing to Carol. She shook her head, no recognition in her eyes. East Cove Holdings. Nothing. Carol frowned. Should I know what that is? Someone thought you might. I have never heard of it. Carol stood up. The interview was over. She walked Nora to the door, her hand on the frame, her body language clear. There was nothing more to say. Nora stepped out into the cold. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind had picked up, blowing the fresh powder across the lawn in white waves. She turned back to look at Carol, who stood in the doorway with her arms crossed against her chest. One more thing, Nora said. Your boots, the ones by the door, they are still wet. The snow stopped 3 hours ago. Carol did not answer. She closed the door. Nora walked back to her cruiser. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, writing notes. Carol had lied about going to the harbor. The harbor was east of the house. The mill was north. The wet boots could have come from either direction, but Carol had said harbor, not mill, and she had said it too quickly. A woman who had just lost her brother. A woman who had been cut out of the will. A woman who lied about where she had walked that morning. Nora started the engine and drove back toward town. She needed to talk to the man Iris had mentioned, the one who had been seen with James Calloway the night he died. The man in the dark wool coat. The one who had been waiting outside the diner. She called the Seabird Inn and asked for Magnus Torkel. He is not here, the front desk said, but Mr. Okafor is in room 12. Should I ring him for you? No, Nora said. I will come to him. She hung up and turned the cruiser toward the bluff. Vincent Okafor. The name was new to her, but she had a feeling it would not stay new for long. The snow began to fall again as she drove. The roads were slick. The sky was low and gray. Somewhere behind her, in the Calloway house, a woman with wet boots and a bitter heart was watching her go. And somewhere ahead of her, in a room at the Seabird Inn, a man in a dark wool coat was waiting. Nora pressed the accelerator and did not look back. She stopped at the station first. The parking lot was still empty. Gannett had not come in. She left a note on his desk with 3 names: Russell Pike, East Cove Holdings, Vincent Okafor. Then she grabbed her notebook and her keys and walked back out into the snow. The Seabird Inn sat on the eastern bluff, overlooking the harbor and the open ocean beyond. It was a large white building with a wraparound porch and 12 guest rooms, each one named after a different lighthouse on the Maine coast. Magnus Torkel ran the place with a quiet efficiency that Nora had always admired. He knew everything about his guests and told no one. He was the perfect neutral party, which meant Nora could never be sure whose side he was on. She parked in the lot and went in through the front door. The lobby was warm and smelled of wood smoke and fresh coffee. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. A young woman at the front desk looked up from her computer. Deputy Alcott, Mr. Okafor is expecting you. Room 12, second floor, at the end of the hall. Nora climbed the stairs. The carpet was thick and muffled her footsteps. The walls were lined with photographs of old Stillwater Cove, black and white images of fishing boats and town parades and people who had been dead for 50 years. She knocked on the door of room 12. It opened almost immediately, as if the man inside had been standing right behind it. Vincent Okafor was 58 years old, tall and lean, with gray hair cut short, and a face that was handsome in the way that expensive clothes and good bone structure could make any face handsome. He wore a dark wool sweater and dark pants. His shoes were polished leather. He looked like a man who had never shoveled his own walk. Deputy Alcott, he said. His voice was calm. Please come in. Nora stepped inside. The room was neat. Almost too neat. The bed was made, the desk was clear. A single suitcase sat on the luggage stand near the window. A black wool coat hung on the back of the desk chair, the coat Iris had described. Thank you for seeing me, Nora said. You knew James Calloway. Vincent nodded. We were partners for 12 years, in New York, finance. He sat down on the edge of the bed and gestured to the desk chair. "Please, sit." Nora sat. She did not take out her notebook. Not yet. "When did you last see James?" "Tuesday night. He asked me to come to Stillwater Cove. Said he had found something important and needed my advice." "What did he find?" Vincent hesitated. The hesitation was careful, measured. The hesitation of a man choosing his words, not searching for them. He found records, old records, something about his father's business dealings in the 1980s, East Cove Holdings. Vincent's expression did not change. "That is what he said." "Yes." "Do you know what East Cove Holdings is?" "I know what James told me. He said it was a shell company, something his father used to move money. He thought there might still be assets tied up in it." "Did James seem afraid?" Vincent considered the question. He seemed anxious, excited even. He thought he had found something valuable. But afraid? No, not when I spoke to him. "When was that?" "Monday afternoon. We had coffee in the lobby. He showed me some papers. Then he said he needed to verify a few things before he took the next step." "Did he tell you what the next step was?" "He said he would tell me when he was ready." Nora looked at the black wool coat hanging on the chair. "Where were you Tuesday night, Mr. Okafor?" "Here, in my room. I read for a while, then I went to sleep." "Can anyone confirm that?" Vincent smiled. It was a small smile, polite, carefully neutral. "I am traveling alone, deputy. I did not order room service. I did not call the front desk. I was alone." Nora nodded. She asked him about his background. He told her about his career in finance, his years in New York, his retirement. He mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he had studied medicine before switching to finance. He had been a doctor, a long time ago, in Nigeria, with a humanitarian program. Nora filed that information away. A former doctor. A man who would know how to administer an injection. A man who would know exactly where to place the needle. "Did James have any medical conditions?" "Mr. Okafor, not that I know of." "Did he have a fear of needles?" Vincent's smile faded. "I do not understand the question." Nora stood up. "Thank you for your time. I may have more questions later." "Of course." Vincent stood as well. He walked her to the door. His movements were smooth, controlled. A man who had nothing to fear because he had already decided what to say. Nora stepped into the hallway. She turned back before Vincent closed the door. "One more thing, Mr. Okafor, the black wool coat. Did you wear it Tuesday night?" Vincent looked at the coat. Then he looked at Nora. His face was perfectly still. "I wore it when I went out for a walk, around 9. The air was bracing." "Where did you walk?" "Down to the harbor and back." "Did you see anyone?" "No, it was very quiet." Vincent closed the door. Nora stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the silence on the other side of the wood. A former doctor. A walk that no one saw. A coat that matched Iris's description. And a dead man with a needle in his arm. She walked down the stairs, through the lobby, and out into the snow. The wind had picked up again, and the temperature was dropping. The storm was not over. It was just getting started. She got into her cruiser and sat there for a long moment, the engine running, the heater blowing warm air against her face. She had 3 names now: Russell Pike, East Cove Holdings, Vincent Okafor. She had a dead man with a needle mark and a sister who lied about where she had walked. She had a former doctor with a perfect alibi that no one could confirm. And somewhere in Stillwater Cove, hidden in the snow and the silence, there was a box that had been taken from a hole in the wall. She needed to find it before someone else did. Chapter 4. The Man from New York. Nora did not go back to the station. She drove instead to the harbor, where the snow was falling harder now, the flakes thick and wet, sticking to the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. The harbor road was empty. The fishing boats were dark shapes against the gray water, their masts swaying in the wind. She parked near the dockmaster's shack and walked to the Breakwater pub. The Breakwater was a low building of weathered gray shingles set on pilings over the water. It smelled of salt and beer and wood smoke. Vera Stout ran the place with a blunt efficiency that discouraged small talk. She was behind the bar when Nora walked in, drying a glass with a towel that had seen better days. "Deputy," Vera said, "you are out early." Nora sat on a stool. The bar was empty except for one old man at the far end, dozing over a half-empty glass. "I need to ask you about James Calloway." Vera set down the glass. She was a large woman, 57, with short gray hair and arms that had hauled kegs for 20 years. Her face was impassive. "I figured you would. He was in here Tuesday night, before he died." Vera nodded. "He came in around 8, sat right where you were sitting, had 2 whiskeys, neat." "Was he alone?" "For a while. Then a woman joined him, mid-30s, dark hair." Nora did not recognize her. "What did they talk about?" Vera shrugged. "I do not listen to every conversation, but I heard the name East Cove Holdings. She said it." He reacted. "How did he react?" "He went quiet, then he left." "Did the woman leave with him?" "No, she stayed for another drink, paid cash, then she left." "Did you get a name?" She did not give one. Vera picked up another glass and started drying it. "But I know where she was staying. Magnus mentioned a woman at the Seabird, checked out Wednesday morning, the day after James died." Nora thanked Vera and walked back to her cruiser. The wind was stronger now, whipping the snow across the parking lot in white sheets. She called the Seabird in from the car. Magnus Torkel answered on the second ring. "The woman in the dark hair," Nora said. "The one who checked out Wednesday morning. What was her name?" There was a pause. Magnus did not like giving out guest information, but he also did not like people dying in his town. "Patricia Lowe," he said, "from Providence. She paid with a credit card. I can give you the number if you need it." Nora wrote it down. She asked Magnus if Patricia Lowe had been alone. She was, but she made a call from the lobby phone Tuesday night, around 9:30. "I do not know who she called." "Thank you, Magnus. Deputy. One more thing. Vincent Okafor asked about you this morning. Wanted to know if you'd been asking questions about him." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I did not know." Magnus hung up. Nora sat in the cruiser, the engine running, the heater blowing. Vincent Okafor was asking about her. That meant he was paying attention. That meant he was worried. She drove to the Bellamy Library. The library was a stone building on Mill Street, built in 1891, with stained glass windows and a hush that settled over you the moment you walked through the door. Dot Fenwick had been the head librarian for 31 years. She was 70 now, precise and patient, with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain. She knew every birth, death, and marriage in Stillwater Cove, going back to 1742. She volunteered information only when she judged you worthy. Nora had been deemed worthy about 2 years ago. It had taken that long. Dot was at her desk when Nora walked in, cataloging a stack of new acquisitions. She looked up and pushed her glasses higher on her nose. "Deputy, you are not here for a book. I need information on a company called East Cove Holdings." Dot did not ask why. She simply stood up and walked to the reference desk, where she pulled a thick binder from a shelf behind the counter. The binder was labeled Property Records, 1970 to 1990. East Cove Holdings, Dot said, turning pages. Incorporated in 1982. Dissolved in 1986. Registered address was a post office box in Portland. The principal was a man named Harold Calloway, James and Carol's father. The same, Dot ran her finger down a page. East Cove Holdings owned a single asset, a warehouse on the harbor, the same warehouse that burned down in 1985. Nora leaned forward. The fire at the Fen boatyard? No, a different fire. Dot looked up. The warehouse was not part of the boatyard. It was a separate building, owned by Harold Calloway, used for storage. It burned to the ground in October of 1985. The fire was ruled accidental, but the insurance payout was substantial. How substantial? Enough that Harold Calloway bought the Harrington Mill 6 months later. Cash. Nora wrote it down. A warehouse fire, a payout, a mill bought with cash, and a man named Russell Pike, who Iris had mentioned. What about a man named Russell Pike? Dot turned more pages. She moved slowly, methodically, her fingers steady despite her age. Pike was a contractor. He did work for Harold Calloway in the 80s. She stopped at a page. He was the one who reported the fire at the warehouse. He called it in at 2 in the morning. He said he was driving by and saw the flames. Was he investigated? The fire marshal at the time ruled it accidental, electrical. Dot closed the binder. But there were rumors. There were always rumors. What kind of rumors? That the warehouse was not empty. That Harold Calloway was storing something he did not want anyone to see. And that Russell Pike was paid to look the other way. Nora thanked Dot and walked to the door. The snow was still falling, thick and relentless. The library windows were fogged with condensation. She stood at the door for a moment, looking out at the street. Dot called after her. "Deputy, one more thing." Nora turned. "Patricia Lowe was in here 2 weeks ago. She asked for the same records. She seemed very interested in the fire." Nora nodded. "Thank you, Dot." She walked out into the snow and drove to the address Magnus had given her for Patricia Lowe. It was a boarding house on the south end of town. A large yellow Victorian divided into apartments. Patricia Lowe answered the door in a bathrobe, her dark hair wet from a shower. She was younger than Nora had expected, maybe 36, with sharp eyes and a guarded expression. "Deputy Alcott," Patricia said. She did not sound surprised. "I have been waiting for you. May I come in?" Patricia stepped aside. The apartment was small and neat, with a view of the frozen garden. A laptop sat open on the kitchen table. A mug of tea steamed beside it. "You knew James Calloway," Nora said. Patricia sat down. She wrapped her hands around the mug. "I knew his father, Harold. I worked for him, briefly, in 1985. "Doing what?" "I was a bookkeeper." Patricia's voice was quiet. "Harold hired me to manage the books for East Cove Holdings. I was 22. I did not know what I was looking at. Not at first. And then I realized the company was not really a company. It was a shell. Harold was moving money, large amounts. He was also storing something in that warehouse, something he did not want anyone to know about. What was it?" Patricia looked down at her tea. "I do not know for sure. I never saw it. But Russell Pike told me it was valuable. Valuable enough to kill for." Russell Pike, the contractor. "He is dead now, died in 2010. But before he died, he told me something." Patricia looked up. "He said Harold Calloway had him set the fire, the warehouse fire. Harold paid him to burn it down and collect the insurance. But there was something in the warehouse that was not supposed to burn, something Harold wanted to keep. What happened to it?" "Russell moved it. Before the fire. He took it to the Harrington Mill and hid it in a wall." Patricia set down her mug. "James found it 3 weeks ago. He called me. He said he had found the box and needed my help to figure out what was in it." "Did he tell you what was in the box?" "Records, old ledgers, bank statements, and a letter." Patricia paused. A letter from Harold Calloway to Russell Pike, promising him $50,000 to set the fire. Nora felt the pieces clicking into place. The box in the wall, the empty recess, the needle in James's arm. Someone had taken that box, and someone had silenced the man who found it. "Where is the box now?" Nora asked. Patricia shook her head. "I do not know. James had it. He was going to show it to me Tuesday night, but he never showed up." "Where were you supposed to meet him?" "At the mill. At 9 o'clock. Patricia's voice cracked. "I waited for an hour. He did not come. I went back to the inn and checked out the next morning." Nora stood up. She left her card on the table. "Do not leave town." Patricia nodded. She looked small and scared and very far from home. Nora walked out into the snow. The wind had picked up again, and the temperature was dropping fast. The storm was getting worse. She had a box full of records, a dead man with a needle in his arm, and a former doctor who had been a very long walk the night James Calloway died. She needed to find that box, and she needed to find it before the storm buried everything under 2 feet of snow. Chapter 5. The Box in the Wall. Nora drove back to the Harrington Mill. The snow was falling so heavily now that she could barely see the road. The cruiser's headlights cut a narrow tunnel through the white, illuminating nothing but the falling flakes and the occasional glimpse of a mailbox or a tree. She had driven this road 1,000 times, but today it felt foreign. The landmarks swallowed by the storm. She parked at the bottom of the mill road and sat for a moment with the engine running. The wind shook the car. The temperature gauge on the dashboard said 14 degrees. She pulled her collar up, zipped her coat to her chin, and stepped out into the cold. The wind hit her like a wall. Snow blew sideways, stinging her face, finding every gap in her clothing. She walked with her head down, one hand on the railing that ran along the road, the other holding her flashlight. The mill loomed ahead of her, dark against the gray sky. The front door was still unlocked. The forensic team had left hours ago, and no one had thought to secure it. Nora made a mental note to talk to Gannett about that, assuming Gannett ever came back to work. She climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. The office was dark, the windows covered in frost. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the desk, the chair, the spot on the floor where James Calloway had died. The forensic tape was still up, yellow and black, marking the boundaries of the scene. Nora ducked under the tape and walked to the far wall. The recess was still there, empty and dark. She shone her light into it, looking for anything the forensic team might have missed. Dust, cobwebs, the scrape marks of a metal box being removed. She knelt down and ran her fingers along the edges of the recess. The wood was old, dry, splintering in places. She felt something catch under her fingernail, a piece of paper, wedged between the back wall of the recess and the framing. She pulled it out carefully. It was a corner of a page, torn and yellowed with age. There was writing on it, faded but still legible. 3 words, East Cove Holdings, and a date, October 15th, 1985. Nora put the scrap in her pocket. It was not much, but it was something. A piece of paper that had been left behind when the box was taken. A piece of paper that proved the box had been there. She stood up and looked around the office. The desk was bare now, cleared by the forensic team. The papers and coffee cups were gone, bagged as evidence. But something else caught her eye, a mark on the floor near the window. A scratch in the wood, fresh enough that the lighter wood was still visible beneath the dark stain of age. She knelt beside it. The scratch was narrow, maybe an inch long, with a small divot at one end. It looked like the kind of mark a metal box might make if someone dragged it across the floor. She followed the direction of the scratch. It pointed toward the window. The window was closed, locked, the glass intact, but the sill was clean, too clean. The rest of the office was thick with dust and grime, but the windowsill had been wiped. Someone had opened that window recently, and someone had wiped it clean afterward. Nora stood at the window and looked out. The mill road was below, buried in snow. Beyond it, the harbor was a gray expanse of ice and water. If someone had gone out that window, they would have landed in the snow. There would be tracks. She went downstairs and around the side of the building. The snow was deep here, untouched, except for the drifts that had formed against the stone walls. She walked slowly, her flashlight sweeping the ground. And there they were, tracks, filling with snow, blurred by the wind, but still visible. A set of footprints leading from the base of the wall to the road. And next to them, a second set. 2 people. One had come from the mill. One had been waiting. Nora followed the tracks as far as she could. They led to the road, where they disappeared under the fresh snow. But she had seen enough. Someone had come to the mill on Tuesday night. Someone had gone in through the window, and someone had left with a box. She stood in the snow, the wind howling around her, and she thought about what Patricia Lowe had told her. James was going to show me the box at 9 o'clock. He never showed up. If James had the box, and James was supposed to meet Patricia at 9, where was the box now? Had James hidden it somewhere else? Had someone taken it from him before he could show Patricia? Or had James already given it to someone else? She walked back to her cruiser, her feet numb, her face raw. The storm was getting worse. The roads would be impassable by nightfall. She needed to find the box before the snow buried every piece of evidence. She drove back to the station. Gannett's car was in the parking lot. The lights were on inside. She parked and went in, shaking snow from her coat. Gannett was sitting at his desk, drinking coffee and reading the local paper. He was 63, with gray hair and a face that had been weathered by too many years on the water. He had been sheriff for 12 years, elected 3 times on pure likability. He was not a bad man. He was just lazy. "Nora," he said, not looking up from the paper, "I heard you have been busy. James Calloway is dead. Someone killed him." Gannett folded the paper and set it down. "The medical examiner called me. He said it was not natural. It was not. Someone injected him with something. We are waiting on toxicology." Gannett leaned back in his chair. He rubbed his chin. "You have any suspects?" "A few. His sister, a business partner from New York, a woman from Providence who used to work for his father." "That is a lot of suspects for a town this size." Nora sat down at her desk. She pulled out her notebook and started writing. The scrap of paper, the scratch on the floor, the clean windowsill, the footprints in the snow. Gannett stood up and walked to the coffee maker. He poured himself another cup. "You know, the selectmen are going to want this wrapped up quickly. The Calloways have been in this town for 120 years. People are going to talk. Let them talk." Gannett turned around. His face was serious now. "Nora, I am not telling you to cut corners. I am telling you to be careful. This family has money and connections. If you step on the wrong toes, you will feel it." "I am used to it." Gannett nodded. He walked back to his desk and sat down. He did not say anything else. He picked up his paper and started reading again. Nora worked through the afternoon, the storm howling outside the windows. She called the medical examiner again. No word on toxicology. The roads were too bad for the courier. She called the state forensic lab. Same answer. At 5 o'clock, she drove back to the cottage. Beckett was waiting on the back of the couch, his yellow eyes watching her through the window. She let herself in, hung her wet coat on the hook by the door, and stood in front of the radiator until she could feel her fingers again. She fed Beckett. She made a sandwich. She sat at the kitchen table with her notebook and a cup of tea, and she wrote down everything she knew. Harold Calloway owned a company called East Cove Holdings. The company owned a warehouse that burned down in 1985. The fire was ruled accidental, but Russell Pike said he was paid to set it. Harold collected insurance and bought the mill. Something was stored in that warehouse, something valuable. Russell Pike moved it to the mill before the fire. He hid it in a wall. James found the box. He called Patricia Lowe. He called Vincent Okafor. He was going to show the box to Patricia on Tuesday night, but he never showed up because someone killed him first, and someone took the box. Vincent Okafor was a former doctor. He knew how to inject someone. He was at the Seabird Inn on Tuesday night. He said he went for a walk. No one saw him. His coat matched the description Iris gave. Carol Calloway had a key to the mill. She lied about where she walked that morning. She had a motive. She was being cut out of the will. But did she have the knowledge? Did she know how to inject someone? Patricia Lowe wanted the box. She had been looking for it for weeks. She met James at the diner. She was at the mill on Tuesday night, waiting for him. But did she kill him? Or did she arrive after he was already dead? Nora set down her pen. Beckett jumped onto the table and sat on her notebook, his large body covering half her notes. She scratched his ears and he purred. Indifferent to the dead and the living and everything in between. She needed more information. She needed the toxicology report. She needed to find the box, and she needed to talk to Vincent Okafor again. But the storm had other plans. She looked out the window. The snow was still falling, thicker now. The wind stronger. The power flickered once, twice, then held. The roads would be closed by morning. The ferry had stopped running. The state lab could not send anyone. She was alone in Stillwater Cove with a dead man, a missing box, and 3 suspects who were all lying to her. Beckett settled into a loaf on her notebook, his eyes half closed. Nora pushed her chair back and stood at the window, watching the snow bury the world outside. Tomorrow, she would dig. Tonight, she would wait. The storm closes in. Nora woke before dawn to the sound of wind. Not the usual wind, the one that rattled the windows and made the old cottage groan. This wind was different. This wind was a living thing, pressing against the walls, trying to find a way in. She lay in bed for a moment, listening, and she knew without looking that the storm had not stopped. It had only gotten worse. Beckett was curled at the foot of the bed, a warm gray lump against her legs. He did not stir when she sat up. He did not stir when she put her feet on the cold floor. He only opened one eye, judged the temperature, and closed it again. The power was still on. That was something. Nora made coffee and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at a world that had been erased. The oak tree was a white shape against a white sky. The harbor was gone. The road was gone. Everything was gone. She checked her phone. No service. The storm had knocked out the tower on the bluff. She was cut off. She dressed in layers, pulled on her boots, and walked to the station. The snow was up to her knees in some places, her shins in others. The walk that usually took 10 minutes took 30. By the time she reached the station door, her face was numb and her lungs burned with cold. The station was empty. Gannett had not made it in. The roads were impassable. Nora started a pot of coffee and sat at her desk, waiting for the phone to ring. The landline still worked. That was the other thing. At 8 o'clock, the phone rang. It was the medical examiner, Deputy Alcott. "I have your toxicology results." Nora reached for a pen. "Tell me." "Potassium chloride. High dose. Enough to stop the heart within seconds." The ME paused. This was not an accident. Someone injected James Calloway with a lethal dose of potassium. They knew what they were doing. The placement of the injection, the dosage, the speed. This was someone with medical training. Nora wrote it down. Potassium chloride, medical training. How fast would he have died? 30 seconds. Maybe less. He would have felt his heart stop. There would have been pain. But he would not have had time to cry out or struggle. The injection site is clean. No tearing, no bruising. The person who did this knew exactly where to put the needle. Thank you. Nora hung up and sat back in her chair. Potassium chloride. It was not a drug you found in someone's medicine cabinet. It was a drug you had to have a reason to have. A doctor, a nurse, someone who worked in a lab, someone who had access. Vincent Okafor was a former doctor. She looked at her notes. Vincent said he went for a walk on Tuesday night. A walk that no one saw. A walk that took him past the mill. And Vincent had medical training. He would have known exactly how much potassium to use. He would have known where to place the needle. He would have known how to stage the scene to look like something else. But why would Vincent kill James? They had been partners, friends, maybe. What did James have that Vincent wanted? The box. It had to be the box. The box with the records. The box with the letter. The box that proved Harold Calloway had committed insurance fraud. If James had found that box, he had leverage. Leverage over anyone who had been involved. And Vincent had been involved. He had to have been. Why else would he be in Stillwater Cove at the exact moment James died? Nora stood up and walked to the window. The snow was still falling, thick and relentless. She could not drive anywhere. She could not even walk to the Seabird Inn in this weather. She was trapped. At 10 o'clock, the door opened. Carol Calloway walked in, snow on her coat, snow in her hair. Her face pale and her eyes red. She was not wearing boots. She was wearing sneakers, soaked through, her feet leaving wet prints on the linoleum floor. "Deputy Alcott," Carol said. Her voice was thin, brittle. "I need to tell you something." Nora stood up. "Sit down, Carol. Let me get you some coffee." Carol sat in the chair across from Nora's desk. She did not take off her coat. She sat with her hands in her lap, her shoulders hunched, her whole body shaking. Nora poured a cup of coffee and set it in front of her. Carol wrapped her hands around the mug but did not drink. "I killed him," Carol said. Nora did not react. She sat down slowly, keeping her face neutral. "Tell me what happened." "I went to the mill on Tuesday night. I wanted to talk to James, about the will, about the money, about everything." Carol's voice cracked. "We argued. He pushed me. I pushed him back. He fell. He hit his head on the corner of the desk." Nora listened. She did not interrupt. "I stood there for a minute. He did not move. I thought he was unconscious. I got scared. I left." Carol looked up. Her eyes were wet. "I did not mean to kill him. I just wanted him to listen to me for once." Nora studied Carol's face. The tears were real. The shaking was real, but something was wrong. The medical examiner had said no head trauma, no bruising, no sign that James had hit anything. James had died from a potassium injection, not a fall. "Carol," Nora said gently, "the medical examiner called this morning. James did not die from a fall. He was injected with something, potassium chloride. It stopped his heart." Carol stared at her. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That is not possible," Carol whispered. "I saw him fall. I saw him hit his head." "You saw what you thought was a fall, but the autopsy is clear. There was no head trauma, no bruising. James was killed by an injection." Nora leaned forward. "Carol, were you alone at the mill?" Carol shook her head. Then she nodded. Then she shook her head again. "I do not know. I thought I was, but when I got there..." The door was already open. The door to the office? "I did not think anything of it. James was always leaving doors open." "What time did you get to the mill?" "Around 8:30, maybe 8:45. "And what time did you leave?" "I do not know. 9, maybe 9:15. Nora wrote it down. Patricia Lowe had been waiting at the mill at 9 o'clock. If Carol left at 9:15, Patricia would have arrived right after. But Patricia said she waited an hour and James never showed. That meant James was already dead. "Carol, did you see anyone else at the mill?" "No," Carol's voice was small. "But I heard something when I was leaving. Footsteps on the stairs. Someone was coming up as I was going down." "Did you see who it was?" "No, I ran. I did not look back." Nora set down her pen. "Carol, you did not kill your brother. Someone else did. Someone who got there after you left, or someone who was already there, hiding, waiting for James to come back." Carol started to cry. Not the quiet tears of before. Real crying. The kind that came from somewhere deep and raw. She put her face in her hands and her shoulders shook. Nora let her cry. She waited. When Carol finally looked up, her face was blotched and wet. "I lied to you," she said. "About the boots, about the walk. I went to the mill that morning, not the harbor. I went back to see if James was still there. I thought maybe I had imagined it. Maybe he was not really dead. But he was. He was..." Carol wiped her face with her sleeve. "And someone had moved him. He was not in the same position. The chair was different. Someone had been there after me." Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Someone had staged the scene. Someone had moved the body, repositioned the chair, made it look like something it was not. Someone with medical knowledge. Someone who knew how to cover their tracks. "Carol, did you tell anyone you were going to the mill that night?" Carol thought for a moment. "I called Vincent. Earlier that day, I told him I was going to talk to James. I asked him if he wanted to come with me. What did he say? He said he had other plans, but he told me to be careful. Carol's eyes widened. Oh God. He told me to be careful, like he knew something was going to happen. Nora stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the snow. Vincent Okafor, the former doctor, the man who went for a walk that no one saw, the man who told Carol to be careful, the man who had access to potassium chloride. She turned back to Carol. Did Vincent know about the box? The box in the wall? Carol nodded. James told him. James told Vincent everything. He trusted Vincent more than he trusted me. Nora sat down again. She wrote Vincent Okafor at the top of a fresh page. Then she wrote potassium chloride. Then she wrote medical training. Then she wrote walked alone Tuesday night. Then she wrote knew about the box. Carol sat across from her, still shaking, still crying, but watching now, watching Nora work. Deputy Alcott, Carol said. What happens to me now? Nora looked up. You lied to a police officer. You tampered with a crime scene. You moved a body. Those are crimes. Carol's face went white. But you did not kill anyone, and you came here to tell the truth. That matters. Nora closed her notebook. For now, you go home. You stay there. Do not leave town. Do not talk to anyone about this, especially Vincent. Carol stood up. She walked to the door, then stopped. Deputy, the box. Do you know what was in it? I have some idea. Nora stood as well. Why? Because Vincent wanted it. Carol's voice was barely a whisper. He asked James about it 3 times. He said it was important. He said it was worth a lot of money. Nora walked Carol to the door. The snow was still falling, the wind still howling. Carol stepped out into the white and disappeared, a dark shape swallowed by the storm. Nora closed the door and leaned against it. She had a killer now, a former doctor with access to potassium chloride, a man who had been at the mill on Tuesday night, a man who knew about the box and wanted it badly enough to kill. She had the motive. She had the means. She had the opportunity. What she did not have was the box, and without the box, she did not have proof. She sat down at her desk and waited for the storm to end. The phone sat silent. The wind rattled the windows. Somewhere out there, in the snow and the dark, Vincent Okafor was waiting too, waiting to see what she would do next. She would not keep him waiting long. Chapter 7. The Autopsy. The storm lasted 2 more days. 2 days of wind and snow and cold so deep that the pipes froze at the station, and Nora had to boil water on the kerosene heater just to make coffee. 2 days of sitting at her desk, staring at her notes, waiting for the roads to open. 2 days of knowing that Vincent Okafor was less than a mile away at the Seabird Inn, and she could not reach him. She called the inn 3 times, each time. Magnus Torkel said Mr. Okafor was in his room, each time. Nora asked Magnus to tell Vincent not to leave, each time. Magnus said he would relay the message, but Nora knew that Magnus was neutral. He would not stop Vincent from leaving. He would only watch and remember. On the 3rd morning, the snow stopped. The sky cleared. The temperature dropped even further. But the wind died down, and for the first time in days, Nora could see the harbor. The ice stretched from the shore to the channel markers, a white sheet that reflected the pale winter sun. The plows had been working through the night. By 8 o'clock, Shore Road was passable. By 9, the road to the bluff was clear enough for her cruiser. She drove to the Seabird Inn. The parking lot was a mess of plowed snow and ice. Only 2 cars were there. One was a sedan with Maine plates that she did not recognize. The other was a black SUV with New York plates, Vincent's car. She parked and went inside. The lobby was warm and quiet. A fire burned in the fireplace. Magnus Torkel stood behind the front desk, his face as neutral as ever. "Deputy Alcott," he said. "Mr. Okafor is still here. He has not left his room since the storm began. Has he had any visitors?" "No. He has taken all his meals in his room. He has not used the phone. He has not spoken to anyone except to ask for more towels. Nora nodded. She climbed the stairs to the second floor. The carpet was still thick, still muffled. The photographs on the walls still watched her pass. She knocked on the door of room 12. Vincent opened it almost immediately. He was wearing the same dark sweater, the same dark pants. His hair was combed, his face was clean-shaven. He looked like a man who had been waiting. "Deputy Alcott," he said. "I was wondering when you would come. May I come in?" Vincent stepped aside. The room was just as neat as before. The bed was made, the desk was clear. The black wool coat hung on the back of the desk chair. The suitcase sat on the luggage stand. Nora sat in the desk chair. Vincent sat on the edge of the bed. They faced each other across the small room. "The medical examiner called this morning," Nora said. "James Calloway died from a potassium chloride injection, a lethal dose. Enough to stop his heart in under a minute." Vincent's face did not change. "I see. Do you know what potassium chloride is, Mr. Okafor?" "I do. It is a salt, used in lethal injections, also used in small doses to treat potassium deficiency, and in large doses. It stops the heart." Nora leaned back in the chair. She watched his face. She had learned long ago that the truth was not always in what people said. It was in what they did not say, in the spaces between words, in the things they did not ask. "You were a doctor, Mr. Okafor. You would have had access to potassium chloride." Vincent nodded slowly. "I was a doctor, a long time ago. I no longer have access to medical supplies. But you could have obtained them." He did not answer. He looked down at his hands, folded in his lap. His hands were steady, too steady. "Where did you go on your walk Tuesday night, Mr. Okafor?" "I told you, down to the harbor and back." "Did you see anyone?" "No, it was very quiet." "Did you go near the Harrington Mill?" Vincent looked up. His eyes were dark and calm. "Why would I go to the mill?" "Because James Calloway was there. Because he had something you wanted." "What did he have?" Nora reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out the scrap of paper she had found in the wall, the corner of the page with the 3 words and the date. She set it on the desk between them. "East Cove Holdings," she said. "October 15th, 1985. Do you know what that is, Mr. Okafor?" Vincent looked at the scrap of paper for a long moment. He did not move. Then he picked it up. He turned it over in his fingers. He set it down. "I know what it was," he said. "A shell company. Harold Calloway used it to hide money, and to hide other things." "What other things?" Vincent stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the harbor. The ice was breaking up near the channel, dark water showing through the white. He stood with his back to Nora, his hands in his pockets. "I met Harold Calloway in 1984. Vincent said. "I was working for a bank in Portland. He came to me with a proposal. He wanted to move money offshore, a lot of money. He said it was from his shipping business. I did not ask questions. I was young. I was greedy. What was the money from?" Vincent turned around. His face was pale. The money was from the warehouse, the one that burned. Harold had been storing stolen goods, art, antiques, things that had been taken from estates in Europe. He had a network, buyers in New York, in London, in Tokyo. The warehouse was his inventory, and the fire. Harold needed the inventory to disappear. He had sold some of it, but there was still too much that could not be explained. So he hired Russell Pike to burn the warehouse, and he collected the insurance. Vincent's voice was flat. "I helped him move the money. I set up the accounts. I was paid well for my silence." Nora wrote it down. Stolen art, an inventory, a fire, insurance fraud, money laundering. What happened to the inventory? Some of it was moved before the fire. Russell Pike took it to the Harrington Mill. Harold planned to sell it slowly, over time. But he died before he could. In 1991, heart attack. And the inventory stayed in the mill. In the wall, yes. Vincent sat down again. James found it 3 weeks ago. He called me. He said he had found something that would change everything. He wanted my help to sell it. But you did not want to sell it. No, I wanted it destroyed. Vincent's voice was quiet. If those records became public, everything would come out. The stolen art, the money laundering, my involvement. I would lose everything. My reputation, my freedom. So you came to Stillwater Cove to convince James to destroy the records. I came to convince him. Vincent looked at Nora, but he would not be convinced. He wanted money, a lot of money. He said he would go to the authorities if I did not help him sell the inventory. And on Tuesday night, I went to the mill to talk to him one last time. Vincent's voice dropped. We argued. He pushed me. I pushed him back. He fell. Carol said the same thing. Nora's voice was steady. She said James fell. She said she thought he hit his head. Vincent looked at her. His eyes were wet. Carol was there. She was there before you. She left. Then you arrived. Nora leaned forward. But James did not die from a fall. Mr. Okafor, he died from a potassium injection. Someone gave him that injection after Carol left. Vincent stared at her. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I did not inject him, he said. His voice cracked. I swear to you, I did not inject him. Then who did? Vincent shook his head. He looked lost. He looked scared for the first time since Nora had met him. He looked like a man who had lost control. I do not know, he said. When I got there, James was already on the floor. I thought he was unconscious. I checked his pulse. There was no pulse. I saw the mark on his arm. I knew what it was. I knew someone had killed him. And you did not call the police? I panicked. Vincent put his face in his hands. I was going to call, but then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone was coming. I went out the window. I climbed down the wall. I ran back to the inn. Did you see who was coming up the stairs? No, I did not look back. Nora sat in silence. She believed him, not because he was convincing, because he was scared, because his story matched Carol's, because the pieces fit. Someone else had been at the mill that night. Someone who came after Carol left and before Vincent arrived. Someone who injected James with potassium chloride. Someone who had medical training. Someone who knew about the box. Someone who was still out there. Mr. Okafor. Nora said, who else knew about the box? Vincent looked up. His face was pale, his eyes red. Patricia Lowe. She knew. She had been looking for it for years. She was the one who told James where to find it. Patricia Lowe, the bookkeeper from Providence. The woman who had been waiting at the mill on Tuesday night. The woman who said she waited an hour and James never showed. But what if she had not waited? What if she had arrived earlier? What if she had gone inside? What if she had found James alone, found the box, and decided to silence the only person who knew she had been looking for it? Nora stood up. She left Vincent sitting on the edge of the bed, his face in his hands. She walked down the stairs, through the lobby, out into the cold. The sun was bright on the snow. The ice was breaking in the harbor, and somewhere in Stillwater Cove, Patricia Lowe was waiting. Nora got in her cruiser and drove. Chapter 8. The Doctor's Hands. The boarding house on the south end of town was quiet when Nora arrived. The snow had been shoveled into piles on either side of the front walk, and the windows of the yellow Victorian were dark. She parked at the curb and sat for a moment, looking at the building. Patricia Lowe's apartment was on the second floor. At the front, the one with the bay window that looked out over the frozen garden. Nora got out of the cruiser and walked to the front door. The wood was cold under her knuckles. She knocked twice. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. The door opened a crack, and a woman's face appeared in the gap. Not Patricia. An older woman, gray hair, glasses, a housecoat. The police, the woman said. She did not sound surprised. She is not here. Patricia Lowe. Is she in her apartment? No. The woman opened the door wider. She left yesterday, before the storm ended. Packed her car and drove off. I told her the roads were not safe, but she would not listen. Do you know where she was going? Back to Providence, she said. The woman shrugged. That is all she told me. Nora thanked her and walked back to the cruiser. Providence was 3 hours south. Assuming the roads were clear, Patricia Lowe had a head start. A day and a half, at least. By now, she could be anywhere. But something did not fit. If Patricia had killed James Calloway, why would she run? She had been careful. She had waited. She had told Nora a story that almost held together. Running made her look guilty, and Patricia Lowe did not seem like a woman who made careless mistakes. Nora drove back to the station. Gannett was at his desk, reading the paper, a mug of coffee steaming at his elbow. He looked up when she walked in. "You look like hell," he said. "Thank you, Sheriff. I heard the woman from Providence skipped town." Nora sat down at her desk. She pulled off her gloves and rubbed her hands together. She left yesterday, before the roads were clear. Gannett set down the paper. That makes her look guilty. It makes her look scared. There is a difference. Do you think she killed him? Nora thought about it. Patricia had a motive. She had been looking for the box for years. She had come to Stillwater Cove to find it. She had met James at the mill on Tuesday night. She had access. She had opportunity. But did she have the means? Patricia Lowe was a bookkeeper. She was not a doctor. She would not have known how to inject potassium chloride. She would not have had access to it, unless she had help. Nora picked up the phone and called the medical examiner's office. She asked for the full toxicology report, not just the summary. The ME emailed it within the hour. Nora printed it out and spread the pages across her desk. Potassium chloride, 40 milliequivalents. A massive dose, enough to stop the heart instantly. The injection site was clean, precise, placed directly into the antecubital vein. The ME had noted that the angle of the needle mark suggested a person with training, a person who knew exactly where to find a vein without looking. Nora read it twice. Then she read it again. A person with training. Vincent Okafor had training. But Vincent had been at the mill after James was already dead. He had checked the pulse. He had seen the mark. He had run. Unless he was lying. Unless he had been the one to inject James. And the story about finding him on the floor was a lie. But why would Vincent tell Nora about the potassium chloride if he had been the one to use it? Why would he admit to knowing what it was? Why would he admit to being at the mill at all? Because he knew she would find out anyway. Because he was trying to control the narrative. Because he was trying to point her toward Patricia Lowe. Nora stood up and walked to the window. The sun was low in the sky, casting long blue shadows across the snow. The harbor was darkening. The ice was breaking up near the channel. She needed to talk to Patricia Lowe, face to face, not over the phone, not through a statement. She needed to see her eyes when she answered the questions. She called the Providence Police Department and asked them to locate Patricia Lowe. Then she called the state police and asked them to put out a bolo for Patricia's car. Then she sat down at her desk and waited. The call came at 4 o'clock. Providence PD had found Patricia Lowe at her apartment. She was not running. She was not hiding. She was sitting in her living room, drinking tea, waiting for them to arrive. Nora asked them to hold her, not arrest her, just hold her. She would drive down in the morning. She hung up and looked at the clock. It was too late to drive to Providence tonight. The roads were still icy. The temperature was dropping. She would leave at first light. She gathered her notes and put them in her bag. She pulled on her coat and her gloves. She walked to the door. Gannett looked up from his paper. "You are leaving?" "I'm going home. I have a long drive tomorrow." "Be careful, Nora." She nodded and walked out into the cold. The cottage was dark when she arrived. Beckett was on the back of the couch, his yellow eyes glowing in the light from the kitchen. He did not get up when she walked in. He only blinked, slow and deliberate, as if to say he had been waiting and she was late. Nora hung her coat on the hook by the door. She made a sandwich. She ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking out at the dark. The stars were out now, sharp and cold. a million points of light in the black sky. She thought about Vincent Okafor, a former doctor, a man who had helped Harold Calloway launder money, a man who had come to Stillwater Cove to protect his reputation, a man who had been at the mill on Tuesday night. She thought about Patricia Lowe, a bookkeeper who had worked for Harold Calloway, a woman who had been looking for the box for years, a woman who had been waiting at the mill on Tuesday night. She thought about Carol Calloway, a sister who had been cut out of the will, a woman who had lied about where she walked, a woman who had found her brother's body and run. 3 people at the mill that night, 3 people with motives, 3 people who were not telling the whole truth. Beckett jumped off the couch and walked to the kitchen. He wound himself around her ankles, purring, his tail curling against her legs. She reached down and scratched his ears. "Someone was lying," she said. "Someone killed James Calloway, and someone took the box." Beckett looked up at her. His yellow eyes were indifferent. He did not care about the box, or the dead man, or the lies. He only cared about dinner. Nora fed him. Then she sat on the couch with her notebook and read through everything she had written, the timeline, the suspects, the evidence. Carol arrived at the mill around 8:30. She argued with James. He pushed her. She pushed him back. He fell. She thought he hit his head. She ran. Patricia arrived at the mill around 9. She waited outside. She did not see anyone. She went home. Vincent arrived at the mill sometime after 9. He found James on the floor. He checked the pulse. He saw the needle mark. He heard footsteps. He ran. But the timeline did not work. If Carol left at 9:15 and Patricia arrived at 9, Patricia would have seen Carol. But Patricia said she saw no one. If Vincent arrived after 9 and Patricia was still there, Patricia would have seen Vincent. But Patricia said she saw no one. Someone was lying about when they arrived. Someone was lying about what they saw. Someone was lying about what they did. Nora set down her notebook. She closed her eyes. She let the facts settle in her mind, like sediment in a glass of water, the heavy things sinking to the bottom. A former doctor, a bookkeeper with a grudge, a sister with a key. One of them had killed James Calloway. One of them had taken the box. One of them was still lying. She would find out which one tomorrow. In Providence, face to face. Beckett jumped onto the couch and settled into her lap, warm and heavy and utterly unconcerned. Nora stroked his back and listened to him purr. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow, she would have answers. She fell asleep on the couch, her hand on the cat's back, her notebook on the floor beside her. The stars moved across the sky. The temperature dropped. The cottage creaked and groaned in the cold. And somewhere out there, in the dark, the box was still waiting to be found. The weight of a name. Nora left Stillwater Cove at 6 the next morning. The sun was just rising over the harbor, painting the ice in shades of pink and gold. The roads were clear, the plows had done their work, and the drive to Providence took just under 3 hours. She spent most of it thinking about Patricia Lowe, a bookkeeper who had worked for Harold Calloway in 1985, a woman who had been looking for the box for nearly 40 years, a woman who had come to Stillwater Cove twice in the past month, asking questions, digging through records, waiting for her chance. But why now? Why after all these years? What had changed? Nora found the answer when she arrived at the Providence police station. The desk sergeant handed her a file. Patricia Lowe had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. She was dying. She had nothing left to lose. That explained the urgency. That explained the desperation. A dying woman with a grudge and nothing to lose was a dangerous thing. Patricia was in an interview room on the 2nd floor. She sat at a metal table, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee, her dark hair pulled back from her face. She looked smaller than Nora remembered, thinner. The overhead light made her skin look gray. Deputy Alcott. Patricia said, "I was wondering when you would come." Nora sat down across from her. She set her notebook on the table but did not open it. She wanted to watch Patricia's face. She wanted to see the truth in the spaces between the words. "I know about the cancer," Nora said. Patricia nodded. She did not look surprised. "That is why I am here. That is why I am talking to you. I do not have time to run. I do not have time to hide. I only have time to tell the truth." "Then tell me, did you kill James Calloway?" "No." Patricia's voice was steady. "I did not kill him. I wanted to. I thought about it. I dreamed about it, but I did not do it." "Why did you want to kill him?" "Because he was Harold Calloway's son, because he had what I wanted, because he was going to sell it, not give it to me." Patricia set down her cup. "I have been looking for that box for 38 years, Deputy. 38 years. It was the only thing that could prove what Harold did. The stolen art, the insurance fraud, the money laundering. I worked for him. I helped him. I was complicit. You wanted the box to clear your name. I wanted the box to destroy his..." Patricia leaned forward. "Harold Calloway ruined my life. I was 22 years old when I started working for him. I did not know what he was doing. Not at first. By the time I figured it out, I was in too deep. I could not go to the police without incriminating myself, so I stayed quiet. I kept his books. I watched him get away with it, and then he died." "And then he died, and the box disappeared." Patricia's voice cracked. "I have been looking for it ever since. Every few years, I would come back to Stillwater Cove, ask questions, dig through records, but I never found it. Until James. He found it 3 weeks ago. He called me. He said he wanted to meet. He said he wanted to help me." Patricia laughed. It was bitter, hollow. "He did not want to help me. He wanted to sell the contents. He wanted money, just like his father." "So you went to Stillwater Cove to get the box?" "I went to get the box." Patricia nodded. "I met James at the mill on Tuesday night. He was supposed to bring the box. He was supposed to give it to me, but when I got there, he was already dead." "What time did you arrive?" "Around 9, maybe a few minutes after. The door was open. I went upstairs. I found him on the floor." Patricia's voice dropped. "I checked his pulse. There was no pulse. I saw the mark on his arm. I knew someone had killed him." "Did you see anyone else at the mill?" "No, but I heard someone. Footsteps on the stairs. Coming up as I was going down. I hid. I waited. I saw a man go into the office. He was wearing a dark coat. He was in there for a few minutes. Then he left. Out the window." "Could you see his face?" "No, it was dark. He had his back to me." "Did he have the box?" "I do not know." Patricia shook her head. "I did not see a box. I did not see anything. I just waited until he was gone, and then I left." Nora sat back in her chair. The story matched. Carol had been there. Vincent had been there. Patricia had been there. 3 people, all at the mill on Tuesday night, all with motives, all with opportunities. But only one of them had killed James Calloway. Patricia. Nora said, "Do you know Vincent Okafor?" The name meant nothing to Patricia. She shook her head. No recognition in her eyes. "Do you know what potassium chloride is?" Patricia frowned. "It is a medication used for heart conditions." "Why?" "Because that is what killed James Calloway. An injection of potassium chloride, enough to stop his heart. Whoever did it had medical training." Patricia's eyes widened. Medical training. She looked down at her hands. Then she looked up at Nora. "Vincent Okafor, the man from New York. James told me about him. He said Vincent used to be a doctor." Nora nodded. She stood up. "Thank you, Patricia. I will be in touch." Patricia grabbed her wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong for a dying woman.
"Deputy, the box! If you find it, I want to see it. Before I die, I need to see it."
Nora looked down at Patricia's hand. Then she looked at Patricia's face. The desperation was real. The need was real, but so was the possibility that Patricia was lying. "I will see what I can do," Nora said. She walked out of the interview room and down the stairs. The Providence police sergeant met her at the front desk. "What do you want us to do with her?" "Nothing. Let her go. She did not kill anyone." The sergeant raised an eyebrow but did not argue. Nora walked out into the cold and got into her cruiser. She sat in the parking lot for a long moment, the engine running, the heater blowing. Patricia's story had confirmed what she already suspected. Vincent Okafor had been at the mill. Vincent Okafor had been in the office. Vincent Okafor had left through the window. Vincent Okafor had medical training. But Patricia had not seen the box. She had not seen Vincent take it. She had only seen a man in a dark coat. Nora needed more. She needed proof. She needed the box. She drove back to Stillwater Cove. The sun was setting by the time she reached the town line. The sky streaked with orange and purple, the harbor dark and cold. She drove past the mill, past the diner, past the library. She drove to the Seabird Inn. Magnus Torkel was at the front desk. His face was as neutral as ever. "Deputy Alcott, Mr. Okafor checked out this morning." Nora's heart sank when, around 11, he paid his bill and left. He did not say where he was going. Did he have a box with him? Magnus hesitated. The hesitation was brief, almost imperceptible, but Nora caught it. "Yes," Magnus said. "A metal box, about 12 inches by 8. He carried it to his car himself. He would not let the porter touch it." Nora closed her eyes. Vincent had the box. Vincent had taken it from the mill. Vincent had been lying the whole time. "Do you know where he was going?" "He mentioned New York." Magnus folded his hands on the desk. "He said he had business to attend to." Nora thanked Magnus and walked back to her cruiser. She sat in the driver's seat, staring at the dashboard, thinking, Vincent Okafor had the box. Vincent Okafor had medical training. Vincent Okafor had been at the mill on Tuesday night. Vincent Okafor had lied about finding James already dead. But why would Vincent kill James? What did he have to gain? The box was evidence. Evidence of Harold Calloway's crimes. Evidence of Vincent's involvement. Destroying the box would protect Vincent, but killing James would only make things worse, unless James was going to expose him, unless James had threatened to go to the police. Nora thought about what Patricia had said. James wanted money. He wanted to sell the contents of the box. He had called Vincent to help him, but Vincent did not want to sell. Vincent wanted the box destroyed. James refused, so Vincent killed him. It fit. It all fit. But she still did not have proof. She had a story, a timeline, a box that was now in Vincent's possession. That was not enough. She needed to find Vincent, and she needed to find him before he destroyed the evidence. She called the state police and asked them to put out an alert for Vincent Okafor's black SUV. Then she called the New York police and asked them to watch his apartment. Then she drove home. The cottage was dark. Beckett was on the couch, his yellow eyes glowing in the light from the kitchen. He did not get up when she walked in. He only blinked. Nora hung her coat on the hook. She made tea. She sat on the couch and stared at the wall. She had been so sure that Vincent was the killer. But now, sitting in the dark, listening to the wind, she was not sure of anything. The box was gone. Vincent was gone. Patricia was dying. Carol was broken. And James Calloway was still dead. She set down her tea and picked up her notebook. She read through everything again. The timeline, the statements, the evidence. Carol arrived at 8:30, left at 9:15. Patricia arrived at 9, saw no one. Vincent arrived after 9, found James dead, heard footsteps, ran. But if Vincent arrived after 9 and Patricia was still there, Patricia would have seen him. But Patricia said she saw no one. Unless Patricia was lying about when she arrived, unless she arrived earlier, unless she was the one who injected James. But Patricia did not have medical training. She was a bookkeeper. She would not have known how to inject potassium chloride. She would not have had access to it. Unless she had help. Unless she had been working with someone. Nora set down her notebook. She stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark. Vincent had medical training. Vincent had access to potassium chloride. Vincent had been at the mill. Vincent had the box. Vincent was the killer. She was sure of it. But she could not prove it. Not yet. She would find him. She would find the box. And she would make him tell her the truth. Beckett jumped off the couch and wound himself around her ankles. She reached down and picked him up. He was heavy and warm, and he purred against her shoulder. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow, I will find him." Beckett did not answer. He only purred. Chapter 10. What the Tide Left Behind. The call came at 2 in the morning. Nora was sitting at the kitchen table, her third cup of tea gone cold. Her notebook opened to a page of scribbled timelines and crossed-out names. Beckett had abandoned her hours ago, retreating to the warm spot on top of the refrigerator. The cottage was quiet except for the wind and the occasional groan of the old radiator. Her phone buzzed. A state trooper named Hendricks, out of the Portland barracks. "Deputy Alcott, we found your man. Vincent Okafor. He did not make it to New York." "Where is he?" "He pulled off at a rest stop on the turnpike about an hour south of Portland." The trooper paused. "He is still there, in his car. He is not going anywhere." Nora's heart rate picked up. "Is he alive?" "He is alive, but he is not well. He took something. We found an empty vial in the car. Potassium chloride. Same thing that killed James Calloway." Nora stood up. She was already reaching for her coat. "Do not move him. Do not let anyone else near the car. I am on my way." The drive to the rest stop took just over an hour. The roads were clear, the sky was black, and Nora drove faster than she should have. She kept thinking about the empty vial. Potassium chloride, the same thing that killed James Calloway. Vincent had tried to kill himself. She found the rest stop just off the turnpike, a small cluster of buildings surrounded by snow-covered pavement. 2 state police cruisers were parked near the far end of the lot, their lights off, their engines running. A third vehicle, a black SUV with New York plates, sat alone near the tree line. Trooper Hendricks met her as she got out of her cruiser. He was young, maybe 30, with a face that had not yet seen enough to harden it. "He is in the driver's seat," Hendricks said. "He is conscious, but barely. EMS is on the way. He would not let us take him to the hospital. He said he would only talk to you." Nora walked to the black SUV. The windows were fogged. She pulled open the passenger door and slid into the seat beside Vincent Okafor. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his lips were pale, and his hands shook on the steering wheel. The metal box sat on the passenger seat, right where Nora was sitting. She had not noticed it at first, hidden under her coat. She picked it up. It was heavier than she expected. Vincent turned his head. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Deputy Alcott, I was wondering if you would come. You tried to kill yourself. I tried to finish what I started." Vincent's voice was weak, barely a whisper. "James, the box, the records. I wanted it all to go away, but I could not make it go away. I could only make it worse." Nora held the box in her lap. "Is this what James found in the wall?" Vincent nodded. "It is all there. The ledgers, the bank statements, the letter from Harold to Russell Pike. Everything. Why did you take it?" "Because I was scared." Vincent closed his eyes. James wanted to sell the contents. He wanted to go public. He said he would name me if I did not help him. I could not let that happen. I have a wife, children, a reputation. I spent 30 years building something. I could not let it all collapse because of something I did when I was young and stupid. "So you killed him?" Vincent did not answer. He just sat there, his hands on the steering wheel, his eyes closed. "I went to the mill to talk to him one last time." Vincent said finally. He was already angry. He had been drinking. We argued. He pushed me. I pushed him back. He fell. I thought he was unconscious. I saw the box on the desk. I took it. But you did not kill him. Not then. No. Vincent opened his eyes. He was not dead when I left. He was breathing. I could see his chest moving. I left him there. I took the box and I left. Then someone else came. Someone else finished what you started. Vincent turned his head. His eyes met Nora's. There was something in them that looked like relief, or maybe surrender. I do not know who it was, he said. I did not see anyone. I went out the window. I climbed down the wall. I ran back to the inn. I did not look back. But you heard footsteps. You told me that. You heard someone coming up the stairs. Yes, Vincent's voice cracked. I heard footsteps, and I ran. Nora sat in the silence. The box was heavy in her lap. The ledgers, the bank statements, the letter, the proof of everything, but not proof of who killed James Calloway. Only proof of who had the motive to kill him. She looked at Vincent. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. The potassium chloride was working. He did not have much time. Vincent, who else knew about the box? Who else had a reason to want it? Patricia Lowe. Vincent said. She had been looking for it for years. She was the one who told James where to find it. But Patricia does not have medical training. She would not have known how to inject potassium chloride. Vincent's eyes widened. Something flickered across his face. Recognition or memory. Carol, he said. Carol knew. I told her. Months ago, when James first found the box, I told her what was in it. I told her about the potassium chloride. I was a doctor. I had access. I kept a supply in my bag, emergency use. Carol knew. Nora's blood ran cold. Carol knew about the potassium chloride. Carol had a key to the mill. Carol had been there on Tuesday night. Carol had lied about what she did. Carol had said she pushed James and he fell, but the medical examiner said there was no head trauma, no bruising, no fall. Carol had injected her brother. And then she had staged the scene to look like an accident. Nora set the box on the seat. She got out of the SUV. She walked to her cruiser and picked up the phone. She called the Stillwater Cove Sheriff's Office. Gannett answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. Sheriff, Nora said, I need you to pick up Carol Calloway, right now. Do not wait until morning. What is the charge? Suspicion of murder, and I need you to search her house. Look for a syringe, look for potassium chloride, look for anything that does not belong. Gannett was quiet for a moment, then he said, I will take care of it. Nora hung up. She stood in the cold, looking at the black SUV, looking at the man inside who had tried to kill himself rather than face the truth. Vincent Okafor was not a murderer. He was a coward. He was a liar. He was a thief. But he had not killed James Calloway. Carol had. Nora walked back to the SUV. She opened the driver's door and leaned in. EMS was pulling into the rest stop, lights flashing, tires crunching on the snow. Vincent, she said, the paramedics are here. They are going to take you to the hospital. You are going to be all right. Vincent looked at her. His eyes were wet. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. Nora did not answer. She stepped back and watched the paramedics load him onto a gurney. Then she got into her cruiser and drove back to Stillwater Cove. The sun was rising when she reached the town line. The harbor was pink and gold, the ice breaking up near the channel, the first gulls circling over the water. She drove past the mill, past the diner, past the library. She drove to the Calloway house. Gannett's cruiser was in the driveway. The front door was open. Nora walked up the steps and into the hallway. The grandfather clock was ticking. The house was cold. Gannett met her in the sitting room. His face was grim. We found it, he said, in her bedroom, a syringe, a vial of potassium chloride, and the box, the metal box. She had it hidden under the floorboards in the closet. Nora nodded. Where is she? In the cruiser. She did not fight. She did not say anything. She just sat there. Nora walked outside. The sun was higher now, the snow blinding white. Carol Calloway sat in the back of Gannett's cruiser, her hands cuffed in her lap, her face pale and still. She did not look up when Nora approached. She did not look at anything. "Carol," Nora said. "Why?" Carol turned her head. Her eyes were empty, because he was going to destroy everything. She said, "The family, the name, the house, everything I spent 20 years protecting. He was going to sell it all. He was going to drag the Calloway name through the mud. I could not let him." "So you killed him?" "I did what I had to do." Carol's voice was flat. "I went to the mill to talk to him. He was already drunk. He was already angry. He said I was nothing. He said I had always been nothing. So I took Vincent's syringe from his bag. I had seen him use it before. I knew what to do." "You injected him with potassium chloride?" "Yes." Carol looked down at her hands. "He did not even fight. He just looked at me, and then he was gone." Nora stood in the snow, looking at the woman in the back of the cruiser. Carol Calloway had killed her brother to protect a name that had been built on stolen art and insurance fraud and decades of lies. The weight of a name, Nora thought. It had crushed them all. She walked back to her cruiser and drove home. The cottage was warm. Beckett was on the couch, his yellow eyes watching her through the dim light. She hung her coat on the hook. She made tea. She sat on the couch and Beckett climbed into her lap. She thought about James Calloway, dead on the floor of a mill, killed by his own sister. She thought about Vincent Okafor, a man who had spent 30 years running from a mistake he made when he was young. She thought about Patricia Lowe, dying in Providence, still waiting for a box that would not give her back the life she had lost. And she thought about Carol Calloway, sitting in the back of a cruiser, her hands cuffed, her face empty. A woman who had killed her own brother to protect a name that was not worth protecting. Nora stroked Beckett's back. He purred. The wind rattled the windows. The sun rose higher over the harbor. Some secrets, she thought, should stay buried. But some secrets, the ones that killed people, had to be dug up, no matter how much it hurt, no matter who it destroyed. She set down her tea and closed her eyes. Beckett settled deeper into her lap, warm and heavy and alive. Tomorrow, she would write the report. Tomorrow, she would face Gannett and the selectmen and everyone else who wanted to know why the Calloway name had fallen. Tomorrow, she would deal with the fallout. But tonight, she would sit here with her cat and her tea and the quiet. Tonight, she would let herself breathe. The weight of a name, she thought again. It was not the name that mattered. It was what you did when no one was watching. It was the choices you made when the weight pressed down on you. Carol Calloway had made her choice. Vincent Okafor had made his. Patricia Lowe had made hers. And Nora, she was still making hers. Every day, every case, every time she chose the truth over the easy lie. That was all from Stillwater Cove for tonight. Nora will be back soon. Until then, stay curious and stay warm. And remember, the weight of a name is only as heavy as the secrets you carry with it.